spending most of their time supporting the ramping reps or the low performers, whether that's, performance improvement plans, coaching them, up or out, and they're kind of overlooked. It's a big opportunity that's been missed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sales Transformation Lab podcast. Today, we have a special episode, one where I've got my co-founder, Matt Milligan, with me. Hello, Matt.
Ash, it's not often we get to do this.
I know, it's fun, right? Today, we are going to unbundle the Global Sales Index Report, a fantastic report that we did recently. 6 years of data, over 500,000 data points, and 45 countries were included in this. So I'm super excited, Matt, to go through this with you today.
Yeah, looking forward to unbundling it.
So, one of the most interesting and biggest facts that came out was around performance and revenue. Now, every CRO is interested in knowing how to improve their performance. But the data said something really interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Top performing reps do 6 times more quota attainment than the bottom guys.
It's a big number.
And they have a 20% improvement in win rate and an 18% deal size improvement.
Wow. It's a lot.
Where are you seeing this in clients right now? Are you seeing this across the board?
Yeah, so I think 6x is a big number, right? I think we are for sure seeing a widening of the gap between high performers and the rest. But when you lay out the numbers and, when you just see the data, it tells such a compelling story. Like 6x is huge. That's a lot. 18% increase in win rate is nuts. If you think the kind of average industry benchmark, if you look across all of our sectors, it tends to sort of average out at about 30%. So if there's an 18% uplift,
20% in win rate,
20% in win rate and 18% in deal size.
Yeah.
So 20% is a big jump. That's a hell of a lot. So yeah, I think what we're seeing is that obviously there's a lot of talk at the moment around the impact of AI and how AI is helping higher performers do more, because I think a lot of the early adopters of these technologies have been the higher performers who are maybe carving out extra time in evenings and weekends to help them become more effective and efficient. So maybe that's one of the drivers behind it, and we're sort of seeing that in some of the qualitative insights as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's the gap between the A player and the C player is huge. But the other thing is, companies are focusing more on trying to get those guys who are really performing badly to become an A player.
Yeah.
But the gap is so far. If you look at this now, it's 6 times the difference. So what companies should be focusing on actually is that middle frozen layer, right?
Yeah, the frozen middle, yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so, this has been talked about for a long, long time, but I think what the latest data in our report is showing that it's becoming more important than ever. And actually, like, you're exactly right. We often hear this from frontline leaders in particular. They get dragged away into spending most of their time supporting the ramping reps or the low performers, whether that's, performance improvement plans, coaching them, up or out. And actually, you got this kind of frozen middle, which is most of the population of the sales team, and they're kind of overlooked. That's a big opportunity that's been missed.
Yeah, totally. So in a sales team, generally what we see across the data is a natural bell curve, right? And the natural bell curve is with A players at the other side of the bell curve on the right side and the lower performers on the left-hand side.
That's right.
But that middle is bell, right? And that's moving that middle towards the right is kind of like where you're going to get the biggest impact on your revenue performance overall. And how do you focus on that rather than obsessing around the kind of C and the D players or the real slow underperformers in terms of getting the fastest impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of our customers said the other day that whoever screams the loudest gets the most attention.
Yeah.
And quite often, it's the underperformers or the ones who are disgruntled or unhappy in the role. And that's where a lot of frontline managers are kind of getting dragged into spending most of their time.
So another big stat that came out from this data, Matt, was that 76% of salespeople lack self-awareness, and there's a perception gap between them and what their manager thinks of their skills.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah. So 2/3, more than 2/3, 3/4. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I guess we see this quite a lot, right? We talk a lot about self-awareness, and it's really difficult to improve your skills and if you don't understand what your strengths and what your improvement areas are. And I think this stat kind of really hits home that there's a long way to go for the industry in terms of building that self-awareness.
Yeah, and what's very interesting about this, though, as well, is that the bottom performers were 5 times more likely to have a lack of self-awareness versus the top performers.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it makes sense, right? Self-awareness, what the data point is showing us is that self-awareness is an ingredient for success. So those high performers are, building that self-awareness, using that muscle of what it is they need to improve to move a deal forward, to hit their number more consistently. And then you've got this kind of disillusionment with the lower performers who overestimate their capabilities.
Also known as the Dunning-Kruger effect as well right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. We get this lack of self-awareness in both sides, but more so in the bottom performers. So this is quite interesting because most sales teams, training and energy put into by sales enablement is focused on the people who shout the loudest. And usually those people who are shouting the loudest are asking for what they need and what they think they need. But that's where the gap is, which is why at UHubs, we never ever just do a single way assessment. We always focus on doing a objective way of doing that, a 360-degree review of a rep. And we always do a 180-degree review of the rep, where the manager also has an input into this, right? And we call this the blind spots. And now all our clients love this blind spots, right? Tell us more about the blind spots.
Yeah, so blind spots is a really interesting data point because it's not something that you can read from your CRM. It's not something that you can gain from your call intelligence platform. Yep. A blind spot is a really unique data point that looks at the level of alignment between a frontline leader and their direct reports. And exactly as you said, we see that there is this huge perception gap amongst sales teams. And once you start tracking blind spots, what we see in our customers is that as that alignment improves over time through better coaching, better transparent feedback, and more self-awareness, performance levels start to increase as well. And we've actually done some research on that. But yeah, we've seen a improvement in alignment, impact performance versus quota by as much as 25%. So it's really significant.
Yeah. I mean, it's so significant. It's a 1.6x difference in terms of when a manager is aligned with a rep and a rep is aligned with a manager's thinking. The difference in quota attainment is 1.6.
It's a big variable, right? It's a big factor.
So the more alignment there is with the manager view of the skill set of the rep, the higher propensity that they are going to hit their quota.
Yeah. I also think it's a really interesting data point to look at for ramping reps as well, because naturally the blind spots are going to be larger when a team member is new to the organization and the manager is still taking time to observe what they're seeing and getting that kind of understanding of where that individual is at. Successful ramp, I think, also shows up in blind spots. We expect to see those blind spot scores decrease as a rep ramps up to target.
But you know what it's like, Matt? Every sales manager thinks they know their reps inside out. But we found that that's not the case, right?
Yeah. Well, the data shows it's not the case, yeah.
Sometimes reps are overconfident, underconfident. And then when managers are trying to coach that rep, they have this kind of frame of reference that they're using to coach this individual. And the alignment's not there. So the more alignment there is in understanding where I feel I'm at and the manager thinks they're at, the better it is to do coaching, to create the safe space, to create the opportunity to train and upskill in the right kind of skills. And that's what coaching is about, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think the other word here is honesty.
Yeah.
We often hear that as well, right?
Yeah.
Frontline leaders are always amazed at kind of how honest the qualitative responses are that we get back through our capability assessments. And it's interesting because this data point, 76% data point shows that there's maybe not enough honesty in the manager and team member relationships in the market.
Yeah. And also, I mean, one of the things that we do with our clients where we found there's a misunderstanding is that they don't understand what capabilities and skills are. And they confuse that with raw activity metrics, for example. Right? Just pick the phone up and do it. Yeah. And don't forget, a lot of managers, as we know, are promoted into management roles because they're good at being a salesperson.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're good at sales is a good thing, but that doesn't necessarily translate to them being a good coach.
100%. It's a different role, right? It's a different sport almost.
Yeah.
The capabilities that got you to being top of the leaderboard as a salesperson aren't the capabilities that will enable you to scale a high performing team and lead, with conviction and provide feedback and guidance and structure and use data to inform your leadership approach. These are all new skills that have to be learned.
Totally. And the people side of it is really important, right? Because skills sit with people and they're not something that you could see in the CRM, but you judge or you think you could see it in the CRM. If a deal is not moving fast enough, what is that? What's the leading indicator behind that? Because what you see in the CRM is lagging.
Yeah,
right?
Mostly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And I think this is where, most leaders have historically just stopped at CRM dashboards. And that's the concept of the dashboard manager.
Yeah.
And then to your point, the behaviors that drives is just kind of do more, make more dials,
Yeah.
But that's not particularly helpful to the team member. And I think, coaching is a really big gap as well. Obviously we talk about that a lot. True coaching.
Yeah.
Of actually helping ask open-ended questions to help the coachee find the answers themselves rather than just giving them the answers, which high-performing reps, term managers tend to fall into that trap. Yeah. Let me just show you how it's done. But actually that's not helping the coachee get anywhere.
Yeah.
And the big risk factor we see there as well is that if that sales manager leaves, what they often leave behind is a team with very low capabilities. They have difficulty standing on their own 2 feet because the high performing manager was doing most of the work for them.
All right. This is another interesting thing that came up. 29% of underperformers that we identified in our clients later on hit their quota.
So 29% of the team members in our data set that were previously underperformers leveled up to become above target.
Correct. Because we continuously monitor how they're doing, and that ability to continuously to monitor them to the end goal has given us these clear insights, this longitudinal insight, which is very rare actually in the industry to get this kind of ongoing insight, because training and many of these kind of enablement is kind of one hit wonder, kind of like, let's get in, do an intervention and move out. But to track something over time, and this data point is very unique to us because it's giving you that long-term view of our interventions and is sales enablement and is the strategy actually working?
Yeah. It's higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
If you think about across the entire data set, which is, it's a significant number here, right? We're talking about thousands of salespeople around the world. And then you're looking at the kind of headline statistics that kind of less than half of them overall are hitting target. But, we're actually seeing movement. Like we are seeing progress. So 30% of the entire population have leveled up.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
It is. And the challenge is that most people think about looking at teams' capabilities as a one-off exercise, but you have to do this on an ongoing basis. You got to have a cadence to track this. Now, we're looking at individuals in our data set who've gone through the process 4 times, right? And it's very efficient to go through because once you've done it once, you get the baseline. And then thereafter, you get this kind of constant data sources that are coming in to support the actual change in these individuals.
Becomes part of the workflow.
Correct.
And I think that what will be really interesting for the next index is to look at some of the specific initiatives that our customers are running that are helping them move the needle.
Yeah.
And get that 30% above target that were previously below.
And also in the next edition, Matt, we're going to be including behavior scores directly from call insights.
Yeah. It's where it starts to get really exciting.
Right. So you can learn something, but then is the behavior changing? So we're now tracking the way the behavior is changing, because if you learn something, the output of learning something is to apply the habit of the behavior.
Yeah.
And if it just happens once or twice and doesn't continue, the habit is not there. And therefore, you're still going to lose the impact of the training, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now we can track that in our platform and you can see that ongoing. So the second edition is going to be even more insightful because we've got extra data layers, which will bring out more insight.
Yeah. And I think it demonstrates why, we call it we refer to it internally as the Holy Trinity, right? Like you have to be looking at capabilities, the knowledge and the skills as one input. You have to then be looking at behaviors, which is coming from, as you mentioned, those actual calls in the field.
Yeah.
And then you have to be looking at KPIs as the lagging metric that those two things are driving.
Yeah.
If you don't have a combination of all three of those things, you're always kind of fumbling a little bit in the dark.
Yeah.
And I think, we've seen historically most leadership teams only lead and manage through CRM data. Then with the arrival of call recording software, the last 5 or so years, they're using a combination of those two. But if you don't have that capability layer that sits on top, you have no direction. You don't actually know what the specific area of improvement needs to be that's going to move, like you said, what is the capability that's going to result in a better behavior that's going to result in a better metric?
If you look at your CRM and find a problem, you're 6 months too late.
That as well.
Because what we've seen in the data set is that the capability moves first before the performance does.
Yeah. Depending on your sales cycle length. If you're selling a really transactional product.
That's true.
Like a lot of our, travel customers, it might be kind of like you might be a week or two late.
Yep.
Some of our more enterprise software customers or, logistics businesses, 12 to 18 months too.
Which is really important that you said that, because this is why longitudinal data over a time frame is really important. Right? Because sales cycles are different for everybody, right? So having it over the year or 2 years, 3 years, you can then see the impact of the interventions and the change, not just having a snapshot and seeing it move before it moves in the CRM or doesn't move in the CRM in this case, if you're not performing.
Exactly. Yeah. And look, I think it goes back to this. As revenue professionals, we are all very short term.
Yeah.
We have a very short term mindset, right? Every quarter is the biggest quarter of our careers. As a chief revenue officer, chief commercial, chief sales officer, you're only ever 2 quarters away from losing your job. I think it's fair to say we're seeing at the moment more turnover in CXO roles than ever before. A lot of chopping and changing of CROs coming and going.
18 months tenure on average.
Yeah, and maybe for the next index, we do a little research piece on that, because based on what we're seeing in the market, I would say that's going down even. Below 18 months.
Why do you think that is?
I think we've got a lot of inflated expectations right now. A lot of pressure on public markets from AI. Certain sectors, so obviously, software, which we do quite a bit of work with software companies. A lot of, declining public sector valuations on those tech stocks,
right?
Which is putting a lot of pressure, and I think that's trickling down. And I think you've then got, obviously we specialize at the private equity stage of the market.
That's right.
You've got a lot of assets tied up where private equity firms have invested 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There's no line of sight to an exit right now. So they're shaking the tree, and they have to try and do something differently to grow revenue. Rightly or wrongly, but I guess, all of the chief revenue, chief commercial officers we work with, they know that it's the game, right? It's like football management.
Yep.
That's why you get paid the big bucks, and you're next on the line if it's not working as the board want it to.
Absolutely. And the challenge that's always been in this industry is that we've always been using data which is old. There's a lack of benchmarks and freshness of data. And here at UHubs, our data is really fresh. It's constantly changing. Markets are changing. Sales cycles are changing. AI products are coming in. All that changes the way the benchmarks work. what are the thresholds? What are your expectations of your sales team, for example?
Yeah.
Knowing those in the context of what's happening in the industry, in your industry as a vertical, but also as a wider piece is important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that there's an acceptance that I'm hearing from the market now that the playbook of the last 5 to 10 years is out the window.
Yeah.
And, a customer said this to me last week. He said, whatever challenge he's faced in his career, there's always been someone out there who's done it.
Yeah.
He said, the problem in the market at the moment is there's no one out there that's done it, because we're all rebuilding the playbook in this AI world. We're all figuring out what works.
Yeah.
So it's placing a lot of pressure on all of us as leaders, navigating businesses through this period. So it's difficult times for sure, but it's going to be super interesting. Like you said, we've got this pulse on the industry. We're seeing loads of really interesting changes in the market, even down to like the profile of a successful salesperson is evolving.
100%. I mean, we used to think the standard profile of an extrovert who can go out there and do deals is the one that's going to win the game. But what I'm seeing are more consultative approach to sales, and the introverts coming through as stronger salespeople in this environment.
Yeah.
Because the skills that they need to have are more around consultative storytelling, problem solving, being a trustworthy partner to the person they're selling to.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because the market's changing fast, and the time when everyone was getting inbound leads and inquiries is drying up. New skills like outbound now need to be taken over.
Yeah.
But AEs and people who've been in the role for a long time with higher tenure, they struggle with those skills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we're seeing a rise, like you said, of the human skills.
Yeah.
It's like the humans are moving more in towards focusing on doing what humans do best, which is those human skills. It's the relationship building, the storytelling. So you got this rise of agents doing and humans being, which I think is really interesting.
But what's also interesting in that context then is that we know everyone's using AI tools, and there's a ton of them out there. But if you don't fix the capability and the skills of your team, all you really are doing is adding a lot of AI multiplication on activity, and you're still missing out on conversion on your pipeline.
Yeah. 100%. That was one of the most interesting insights from the most recent index, I thought personally.
Yeah.
We're seeing that we are seeing increase in throughput. Agents are helping us do more.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily helping us do better. And I think that's the next phase of this transformation that the industry is going on.
So one of the things we've seen with CROs thinking is, should we hire more people?
Yeah.
Should we just fire the ones which aren't good enough? Or should we focus on the ones we already have? What's your view on this?
If the portfolio companies have the commercial capabilities to get to that next milestone. And oftentimes when a leader comes into one of these organizations, one of the first problems that they need to solve is figuring out, do I have the right players with the right capabilities in the right positions that can get us there? Because if you think about, again, going back to our earlier point around 2 quarters to save your job, you don't have long to make these decisions.
Yeah.
Because if ramp times are 6 months, that's basically, that's your 2 quarters gone.
Yeah.
So you've got to make these decisions quickly as a leader coming into role. So look, I think it depends on the organization, and it depends on the current capability profile that a leader inherits when they come into the role. I think some of the data from the report that was particularly interesting was the case being made for working on improving capability rather than purely hiring.
Yeah.
I think the default mode at the moment, there's a lot of narrative around cut headcount. just kind of remove junior talent entirely, focus on experience. But it's interesting because the report looked at some of the data. So we looked at moving some of that frozen middle. So we did a piece of research on 20 mid-tier performers who are currently at below quota.
Yep.
And what's interesting is that if you can lift that frozen middle or underperforming cohort, if you can move those 20 reps up into the higher performing quadrant, so if you can sort of improve their quota attainment by just 20%, at a 500k annual quota, that's worth 2.4 million in additional revenue to the business across 20 reps. What's interesting is that if you went with the alternative strategy, so instead of investing in those 20 mid-tier reps, if you moved them out the business and you hired, you would require 12 brand new hires. So you get rid of 20, you go out, you hire 12. But even if you get those, all 12 of those hires successfully ramped and hitting target, you're only looking at a 1.2 million revenue benefit. So you've really got your work cut out. If you're culling, if you're getting rid of headcount and you're rehiring, you're putting yourself in quite a risky position. You've got to really back yourself that you've got the ability and the network to access the right talent with the right capabilities. You've got to back yourself that you've got a product or a solution and a motion that those reps can come in and sell. And you've got to back yourself that there's sufficient pipeline in place for them.
Yep.
Otherwise you could go out to market, you could make those 12 hires, and even if you get them all up to speed, you're still not going to be generating the incremental revenue that you are if you get those mid and low performers up to the level.
Yeah. So old strategies of the past no longer are commercially viable. You come in, see a team, get rid of the ones which are the lowest performers and try and replace them with some new people.
Yeah.
And then hope that you'll hit your forecast.
Yeah. So, in essence, what the data is showing us is that improving 20 existing low performers is worth 12 new hires to your business. And that ties in nicely with the narrative that we're hearing from boards, right?
Yeah.
The pressure is all about do more with less, leaner headcount, use AI to make everybody more efficient.
Yeah.
I think the key component in this equation is how do you figure out who is worth investing in the first place, and who has the capability profile that can make that step up and that leap. And that's where, having a capability benchmark is really, really powerful as a tool.
Yeah, 100%. Big question, big problems in the industry right now, Matt. And I keep hearing this. Pipeline.
There's never enough pipeline. I don't think there ever has been enough pipeline.
Everyone struggles with it. But one of the things that we do say is that if you do have a pipeline and you have a strong enough pipeline, if you're not improving the skills of the team to convert the pipeline that you do have, then you're always going to say you need more pipeline. So we need to improve the win rates. We need to improve the sales cycle lengths. We need to improve the cross-selling and the upselling.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what's going to grow the accounts and revenue to the business, not just trying to say it's about a volume of pipeline. Yes, pipeline is an issue.
Yeah.
But how are you seeing CROs think about this right now?
Yeah, I think quality is for sure an important factor in terms of volume. I think the other issue or challenge that we're seeing in the market at the moment is revenue leaders overinflating their pipeline. So the board is placing so much pressure on them to increase pipeline. But like, how much of that pipeline is real? How much of it is actually, it shouldn't be in there. It should actually be qualified out because it's either not ICP or there's not actually a clear economic buyer in the deal, for example. So I think that's a big risk factor as well, is like inflating the pipeline just to kind of appease and satisfy your board.
Yeah.
very dangerous, risky business, because then, as you said, you could be sort of setting yourself up for failure with really low conversion rates. There's one other point there that I think is interesting as well. However, you mentioned the importance of cross-sell and upsell and retention.
Yeah.
A lot of the businesses that we work with are between sort of, 20 and 200 million in revenue. And there's a lot of talk in the moment around kind of what is a moat, what is a defensible moat. Is it, because products, if you talk about here about technology businesses, a lot of features and are very, in the market's mind, easy to replicate through AI. Well, actually, a customer I had with a customer conversation I had last week, we were talking about revenue is a moat. If you're at 50 million or 100 million, pretty hard to get to 50 million or 100 million as a business. So that is, in a way, kind of a defensible moat. So retaining that revenue is so important in this current market. And making sure that you're investing in your post-sales motion and you've got the right team members with the right capabilities on that side of the business. Because if you can protect that revenue during this period of SaaS apocalypse, AI doom, that's something to kind of really protect.
Yeah, totally. We're seeing, when we're building capability frameworks for some of our clients, expansion sales, and it is becoming more of an interesting capability itself. And how do you track that? But also, we're not just seeing the data from AEs and SDRs in this data set. We're also looking at CS people and solutions engineers and people who are involved in the sales process to actually increase the sales price, average order value over time. This land and expand motion, this idea of being able to serve a client, solve a problem, but also to expand that account with the sales team, with the CS team, with the solutions engineers. It's now becoming much more of a bigger team play with the revenue org, not just sales and SDRs and AEs, which is what I'm finding, which is really interesting because there's a lot of cross-pollination between that. And also, from a talent management perspective, the thing that I'm seeing is we're seeing SDRs get promoted into AE roles or AEs getting promoted into CS roles and vice versa and moving around. Retaining talent and retention. But how do you know what skills they have to do that? And one of the things that we noticed from our data set, we helped one of our clients look at this, was how do you look at talent mobility within your revenue org? To make the most out of people who are really good at speaking to clients and consulting with them and storytelling and building out this narrative to be able to expand deals versus somebody who's really good at getting that first deal in.
Yeah, it's a really big one at the moment for sure. There's just a lot of innovation happening with regards to org design at the moment. And obviously the examples there you talked through are kind of more software related, but even seeing a lot of innovation towards more of a pod structure, like you spoke about, where actually you will have a maybe a pre-sales engineer, you'll have an account executive or a business development manager. You'll create this pod structure, then you actually incentivize and commission the pod. So they kind of have a shared target and a shared number to go after, which I think is a really interesting model. And then also seeing a lot of innovation on our professional services customers, where they're starting to think about the split of business development roles versus delivery roles. How do you get that balance and that mix right? There's a bit of a tendency to maybe hire too many BDs, when actually what you need to think about doing is making sure that you've got subject matter experts that have enough commercial capabilities to source pipeline and close pipeline essentially.
Yeah, we're seeing that with clients right now, as you said, where professional services specifically, where a certain type of role, a technical consultant or a solutions engineer, they're looking for them to build more sales skills. And sales skills can sound like a dirty word to some of these people, right? Because like, well, I'm a consultant, I'm a technical person. But sales skills are being able to tell a great story, give compelling evidence, use data to tell a great story and explain to clients how they can make something, solving problems, really.
Exactly.
So they're actually they're the best people suited to learn the sales skills because they can solve problems technically, understand them. They need those extra skills to be able to persuade, to build a narrative, to carry the deal flow forward, time management, all these other skills which are also becoming more important for those roles.
Entirely, yeah. And again, you know, another interesting vertical that we do a lot of work in is travel. And you think about the kind of unique pressures and seasonal volatility of the travel industry. So much pressure is placed upon certain quarters, certain months.
Yeah.
You know, and actually what we're seeing is that it's the longer tenure travel consultants that are really able to consistently execute and deliver, but it's taken them 5 years to get there.
Right.
That's a really long ramp period to wait 5 years for someone to get up to speed and become confident in their capabilities and their sales abilities. So, you know, anything that we can do to put the right interventions in place to reduce that ramp period from 5 years to 3 to 2, it's going to make massive difference to these organizations.
Yeah, huge. So there's a lot of investment right now from companies and CROs into coaching. But what we're seeing is that, number one, sales managers themselves need to improve their skills in coaching. And the data that we hold on the UHub's platform right now, we have a lot of sales manager effectiveness data in terms of coaching, which is a unique insight that we give our clients. And we're also seeing the investment in managers becoming important, not just the reps, and hitting the reps on the head and going, you need to improve. What are you seeing in the industry and with clients that we're working with right now in terms of the types of strategies that CROs could think about when it comes to the manager layer, not just the rep layer?
Yeah, it's a really big one. Really big topic at the moment, isn't it? How do you optimize that manager layer? Look, I think a couple of things. The manager role is for sure changing in lots of organizations. So I think we're moving away from a world where frontline managers are seen as purely measurers. You know, they have dashboards and they're measuring their team and then they're performance managing. And I think there's now an expectation with AI for managers to sort of become much more either player coach. So you have to be doing some form of selling as well as leading, which creates pressures and interesting dynamics on its own. But I think also there's also now an expectation on managers to become builders, to actually use the latest AI tools to build agents for their team. And so almost a little bit of crossover into, you know, AI engineering and RevOps, which is a really fluid space at the moment. So the role of the manager is changing. I think that's one point, which is really important to think about. I think the second point is just a huge capability gap that we see, which is around coaching. A lot of managers think that they are coaching, but what the data is showing us is that the reps don't feel like they're being coached. So there's this disconnect in the industry. I think some of the latest tools and technology have a big role to play in terms of streamlining the manager's workflow and making their life a lot easier. You know, we're talking a lot at the moment about MCP and, you know, we're connecting the UHub's data natively inside of the manager's workflow to just really support and really operate as that chief of staff for managers to help them become more effective. And I think the other theme we're seeing in the market at the moment, which came out in the research, is also consistency. So how do you get, if you've got 15 managers, how do you get them all working more consistently as a leadership team? You'll have managers over here with their own set of ways of doing things, ways of running one-to-ones. Then you've got a different manager over here who maybe doesn't run one-to-ones. Really difficult as a CRO to build a consistent revenue engine if your managers are all off doing completely different things. It's a big gap in the market for sure, but also I think a huge value creation opportunity if you can fix that.
Yeah, and some of the data that we've produced for some of the clients is to, for example, create peer-to-peer learning opportunities for managers.
It's a really good one.
Right? Because when you have managers who are doing two different things and they're excelling in those two different things, why not bring them together to learn on how to do that and cohort those into training opportunities for managers themselves?
Yeah.
And we do this across the reps as well as peer-to-peer, but for managers specifically, because different techniques, different tools, different backgrounds, potentially different, tenures, makes a huge difference. But the biggest thing for managers is time, right? And that's where you're talking about the MCP, right? And the ability for them to access our data and use it in a way that's really in the flow is important, because they don't have time.
Yeah.
Right. We've got managers right now who are prepping their one-to-ones using our MCP in 5 minutes with pure data-led insights. Right? Using KPIs, using the calls, using the pulse technology, and using all this data layer to create really detailed, precise coaching opportunities. That saves them a ton of time. Right? That's just an example of day-to-day on how to utilize this. And then using it ongoing, right? The data's fresh, it's coming through, and it's always part of what we're doing. So we also help with the data that we produce and how you can become a better manager.
Yeah.
Which is really important, right?
Totally. Yeah, and I think for those listening who aren't familiar, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. So this is you can think about it as the unified API for LLMs to communicate with third-party tools. So that's really powerful, because what it does is it brings the benchmarking data that we gather here at UHubs, and it brings the context layer of the capability framework, which really operates as a framework for managers to lead and coach against. And it brings all of that into their workflow. You know, most of them are spending most of their days inside of tools like Claude.
Yeah.
They now don't need to go anywhere to access all of this power, all of this powerful insight. Yeah. So it's at their fingertips.
Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure. Everyone listening, if you want to grab the Global Sales Capability Index, it's the world's first level of data that we have in this, 500,000 data points. It's available on our website. Go and check it out. It's a free benchmark report you can download directly from the website. And if you've got any comments or thoughts, feel free to reach out to us. We're on LinkedIn, and we look forward to hearing more about the insights we shared here and how you utilize them. And Matt, it's been a pleasure to come into the podcast studio to do this in a hot, sunny day.
Yeah, exactly. It's warm up here in the studio. But yeah, go grab a copy of the report, folks, and reach out to us, and we'd love to do a walkthrough of some of the key insights we're hearing from the market.
Thank you, everybody.